Everybody, and a happy 2025. Happy New Year. Blessings, prosperous, joy, all of those accolades. I speak it into existence for you. What's up, everybody? Tolly Carr, HBCU Gameday here in Atlanta. Let me share in the new year, the new you with the new crew here. Well, actually, they're the old crew. Stephen J. Gaither and Wilton Jackson. But we do have some new coaches to talk about. Last week here on HBCU Gameday, we were talking all about Michael Vick. He's still a hot topic, but one of his former teammates is joining him in the MEAC. Deshawn Jackson is taking over for Delaware State University. Steve, it's been an interesting end of the year here in the MEAC.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, when we talked last week, I was in Virginia, sun setting in my face on Michael Vick's first day, official day as head coach. And that was all the buzz. And, we knew we had a couple more openings left. And I don't know that anybody saw what was going to happen next. I think that was probably even more shocking than Mike Vick. Michael Vick, we kind of heard the reports and rumors for a couple of weeks, but, in the middle of the week, Victory Formation Media, Jeff Lightsey was the first to report that Deshawn Jackson was going to be the head coach over at Delaware State University. So, and that kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, this is a guy who, was just playing. I think he played in 2022. So, right, we're just at the end of the 2024 season. So he's barely out of there. I found out he's a month younger than me. He's only 39. And, he's going to be the new head coach over at Delaware State University. I think that was really a bombshell in a lot of ways.
Wilton, what do you make of this news? First, Michael Vick, now Deshawn Jackson, two former NFL stars in their own right. Deshawn Jackson, of course, a speedy wide receiver for many years, taking over at Delaware State. A little surprising, I think, for everyone. What did you make of the news?
Pretty much what Steve just echoed. I definitely didn't see that one coming. I mean, you heard about the rumors about Michael Vick to Norfolk State, for some weeks in advance, but definitely didn't see Deshawn Jackson coming to Delaware State. But this is one of those situations where, you get a former NFL player, as Steve just alluded to, 2 years removed from the game. And now he's about to be in the head coaching seat. I'll be interested to see what he does. The one thing I guess I would give Michael Vick, he's kind of been away from the game a little bit, had some opportunity to kind of, work with kids and different things. That's not to say Deshawn Jackson hasn't had any experience working with kids, but, now you're getting in a college coaching position, looking to resurrect, another program, in Delaware State. So, yeah, I was a little shocked, but, now that the opportunity has been made, we'll see what happens.
All right, Steve, so a lot of people out there are going to suddenly pay attention to Delaware State that never paid attention to Delaware State before, or maybe just loosely paid attention to Delaware State. What type of year did they have? What is the recent history on the Delaware State football program?
Yeah, well, if people didn't pay attention to Delaware State, they really didn't have a reason to, other than the time they missed that flight. I mean, that was kind of the width and the breadth of the excitement around them. But no, they did finish, they did play solidly actually against Hawaii after actually making it out there. And then I believe it was their next game, they got a chance to get a win against Sacred Heart. That was their first Division I win that they had under then head coach Lee Hull. This is a team that went 1-11 this year, and they were 1-10 last year under head coach Lee Hull, who was, hired just 2 years ago. So, and that's not just been a short-term thing. There's been a long-term thing with them. The last winning season that they had was in 2012, and the coach was none other than a guy we both know, Tyler Kermit Blunt, who took over there after leaving Winston-Salem State. So it's been that long since they've had a winning season. They haven't won the MEAC since 2007. I was in school. WSSU was in the MEAC when they won. That's how long ago it's been. Hampton was in the MEAC, A&T. They've only got one championship since 1991. So this is a program that has been downtrodden, as you would say. They've kind of been. Some people have called them the Mississippi Valley of the MEAC, if that lets you know anything.
All right, Wilton, Mississippi native there. Maybe some shots fired at the SIP. Wilton, Deshawn Jackson, on his impact meter, where do you put him in terms of a guy that could maybe get some players excited about transferring in? We did see one of the backup running backs at Jackson State has committed there. What type of things do you think he can do with his name there at Del State?
Well, I mean, Tyler, with his name, he's going to be able to get players, right? I mean, any type of player that has had a significant impact in the NFL in their playing careers, they're going to get, that attention, that notoriety that comes with that. And I don't expect anything less with Deshawn Jackson. The caliber, or I guess the number of star players that he's able to get in, that remains to be seen. And I think a lot of that just kind of goes back to, here it is, obviously a first-time coach. He was a wide receiver. He didn't necessarily play at a quarterback position or some other specific position or whatever. But it's just I'm just interested to see what he's going to look like as a coach. Because, again, I can remember, and I guess this is me comparing it to Michael Vick. Michael Vick has been away from the game for a while. Like, he had a chance to kind of, learn and work with, different kids on different levels and things like that. And just to kind of see where things would be. I'm not solely sure if Deshawn Jackson is going to be able to do it as well as, per se, Michael Vick does in his first year. It'll be interesting to see how both do in their first seasons. But, I mean, and I've said this before, everything comes back to who's going to be on his coaching staff, the coaches he brings in to kind of help guide him on his decision-making and his coaching philosophy. So I'll be interested to know where his philosophy comes from, the type of coaches he brings in. That'll kind of determine whether or not I'll see where his trajectory goes in his first season.
All right, so Wilton on the fence with DeSean Jackson there at Del State. Steve, we have seen this before. Guys come from the NFL. Mike Vick is coming from the NFL, and he's coming from Fox Sports. They're accustomed to, even going back to their college days, a certain amount of resources, a certain amount of workforce, if you will, that might not be the same at HBCUs. We saw some growing pains, if you will, there with Deion Sanders when he first got to Jackson State. What type of challenges do you think, or do you feel like these guys might now be prepared for, where there might have been 20 people in a department? There could only be 2 now, maybe 1, maybe 5, depending on the school. Do you think these guys will be ready for that?
I would hope so, but you never really know till they get in the foxhole. Again, both these guys, as you say, both went to Power 5 schools. Michael Vick went to Virginia Tech. Deshawn Jackson went to Cal. And, Michael Vick even talked about it in his introductory speech last week, that basically, he grew up going to HBCUs, but he got seduced by the bells and whistles, ended up at Virginia Tech. Deshawn Jackson coming from LA, there are no HBCUs there. So, he never had that exposure. So this is new ground for both of them, at least being intimately involved in the day-to-day there. I know that, in terms of I would say communication and resources. And again, I know Norfolk State has a pretty solid SID staff, Delaware State as well. Great SID. Probably, they're probably going to have to increase their assistance because, everybody's going to be all eyes on these guys. Again, these are going to be 2 programs that have gone from being afterthoughts in the MEAC for so long to, whenever Norfolk State and Delaware State play, I don't think it will obviously be the most anticipated Norfolk State-Delaware State game ever. And the MEAC Media Day, again, as I said last week, it's going to be way more crowded than it used to be, and it just got a lot more crowded. So, everybody's awareness is going to be gone up, and we'll see if the infrastructure is going to be there.
It'll be something to watch in 2025 for sure. You are watching HBCU Game Day. All right, guys, let's continue the conversation here. Let's talk a little SWAC football. There's a brand new head coach at Alabama A&M. Sam Shade comes over from Miles College. Sam Shade was a NFL player as well. I think he played about 8 years in the league. University of Alabama product. Did an excellent job at Miles College. Got them to the NCAA Division II playoffs this year. They were the team to beat in the SIAC while Sam Shade was there. He got always been a good program, and he kept it going. Steve, Connell Maynor was let go. He was the most tenured coach in the SWAC at Alabama A&M. Sam Shade comes in to take his spot now. Your thoughts on the hiring of Sam Shade at Alabama A&M?
Yeah, well, this is one, a lot of people put this together kind of like they did last year with Chennis Berry and South Carolina State. It just made sense. The guy from the local Division II HBCU, neighboring Division II HBCU that had success. For Chennis Berry won 2 titles in the SIC in 3 years, and then he leaves. And then now Sam Shade took over that mantle, doing the same thing over at Fairfield, Alabama. So I got a chance to watch the announcement on the From the Hill podcast that Dr. Paul Bryant appeared on yesterday. And he talked at length about, why he was the choice. There were some rumors that potentially,
say it.
Red Eve was going to be the head coach, but that was not to be. And so, Sam Shade again, it's interesting. We get the conversation about bringing up guys from Division II or going for former NFL guys. Well, Sam Shade actually checks both boxes. So really interesting hire. And now it's the MEAC that's going for the splash hires and the SWAC that's going for D2 guys who have had a lot of success. Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
We almost had another Ed Reed story there. Always fun times when Ed Reed enters the chat. Wilton, your thoughts on Sam Shade? Great job at Miles. Football acumen is there for sure. Maybe not, has the pedigree, but not a household name. Maybe like Deshawn Jackson, Michael Vick, Deion Sanders, Eddie George, if you will. But I think a solid hire. What do you think, Wilton?
I think it's a fantastic hire, honestly. Yes, he's not a Michael Vick or Deshawn Jackson, but this is someone who definitely knows the game of football very well. Played on a championship team at Alabama, so he has that pedigree, like you mentioned. Played in the NFL, but more than anything, he always gets the best out of his players. We talk about the impact that Chennis Berry had at Benedict and what he was able to do at South Carolina State in his first season. I'm expecting him to really, put Alabama A&M in some really good positions to be successful this year. Obviously, I wouldn't be surprised if he brought over some of those players from Miles. You talk about a intense defense that they had this year in the SIAC. Obviously, talent on both sides of the ball, specifically on offense as well. So I'm expecting Sam Shade to have success at Alabama A&M. I wouldn't necessarily put them as a favorite out of the SWAC East yet, but I definitely feel like they'll be in a better position than what they were from this past year coming into 2025.
And Wilton, you're right there in the SWAC, living in Mississippi, Jackson specifically. That division just got a little more competitive, and Alabama A&M fans have been hungry. They just been middle of the pack, like good offense, but give up too many points on defense. Sam Shade might be able to change the culture, the identity, and maybe Magic City Classic win wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, I was thinking to myself when they made that hire, Magic City Classic got very interesting. So if I'm, Alabama State fans, shout out to Eddie Robinson Jr., but that game gets very, very intense now. I know Alabama State has won it in the last couple of years, but that's definitely a game you want to start circling on your schedule right now.
Steve, what do you think this does for that division, the SWAC East, with Sam Shade now at Alabama A&M, if anything at all?
Yeah, I think it's just another log in the fire. I mean, if you look at that division of the SWAC, it's carried the SWAC even back to prehistoric times now. But when Alcorn State was going to the Celebration Bowl, they were doing it out of the East, and so you've seen Alcorn State, you've seen Jackson State, you've seen FAMU, now Jackson State rising again. Alabama State, they're in the shadow, lurking in the shadows as well. We'll see if Sam Shade gets SWAC checked or not at that Magic City Classic. But I think it's definitely, like you say, a potential Chinnisberry type situation where he'll be able to now, because of the transfer portal and players really having that freedom, he can kind of bring who he wants to from there. I know our good friend Luke Williams, who is a part of the HBCU Legacy Bowl selection process. He and I were talking a couple weeks ago on our D2 show, and he talked about how, Miles, if Sam Shade were to get the job, Miles had a lot of young talent. They didn't have a lot of guys who were eligible for that. And so, again, we saw Chinnisberry took a lot of those guys from Benedict and was able to translate some of them with what was left from Coach Pugh to win the MEAC title and play in the Celebration Bowl. So I'm not going to say that Coach Shade is going to do that this year, but hey, anything's possible.
It is something that we will have to watch. We have more football to talk about, even some hoops as well, as we kick off the new year with HBCU Game Day. All right, guys, let's continue this football conversation before we transition into a little bit of hoops before we get out of here. Let's bring the crew back in here, Stephen J. Gaither and Wilton Jackson over there on the end. Steve in the middle. There are some existing HBCU coaches who have had something to say about the recent hires. We started off the show talking about Deshawn Jackson landing at Delaware State. Last week, it was the Michael Vick special here on HBCU Game Day, but some coaches, different takes. Who was the coordinator that said they are looking forward to the challenge to match their X's and O's and their football acumen against some of these pro guys, and said, hey, I hope they don't think we're sweet over here?
Yeah, that's Anton Sewell, who's the defensive coordinator over at Morgan State University, was also with Coach Damon Wilson when they went on their run of 3 straight CIAA titles not too long ago. So, yeah, he's a very accomplished defensive mind. They didn't have the greatest defensive year this year, but he's licking his chops to going up against the Michael Vick and Deshawn Jackson's new look offenses.
And Wilton, I think this is a bonus for existing MEAC coaches. Look, when you think of Trey Oliver, well, what is his signature win? Knocking off Jackson State in the Celebration Bowl. There is the potential for more exposure, more games. Look, I don't know what's going to happen, but you would think Michael Vick is going to end up with Norfolk State on TV a little more. Deshawn Jackson as well. If nothing else, then the social media and internet buzz that will go on week to week as they coach. But the other team is going to practice and show up to play as well. And these can be some big resume games for other coaches, right?
Oh, absolutely. Definitely going to be some resume games. And that's why I say, like, even with the likes of Michael Vick and Deshawn Jackson coming into the MEAC, let's not forget the MEAC has already had great coaches, and those great coaches are still there. Like, you still, and I said this on a previous show, Chinnisberry is still the coach of the MEAC champions in 2024 in South Carolina State. Chinnisberry is a great coach. Didn't win the Celebration Bowl, but he's still an excellent coach. It's only going to get better. We know that Trey Oliver is a person that remembers everything. So as a team in North Carolina Central that didn't get a chance to compete in the Celebration Bowl, you have to know that they're going to be hungry to get back to their place of where they believe they feel that they should be at the top of the MEAC. And of course, Damon Wilson at Morgan State, he's not going anywhere. And also in Coach Scott at Howard, like this, if I'm any of those coaches, this just gives me extra added motivation to want to beat some of these players who played in the NFL, who played at the next level. But at the same time, you're also on one side, in a way, thanking them because it gives their players on the coaches that I'm referring to, gives their players more exposure in hopes that they'll have more opportunities to potentially get to the levels, i.e. the NFL, where they want to be.
And Steve, I think it's a good mix in the MEAC right now. You got your traditional HBCU guys, if you will, coaching, and you got a couple of really big names in there. Where do you think this helps, if at all, the MEAC with the hiring and back-to-back weeks of Michael Vick and Deshawn Jackson?
Yeah, I mean, I think it helps the notoriety for sure of the MEAC. I mean, that's one thing that they struggle with. Again, it's been well chronicled how, they've lost a good number of their team programs in the last decade. And, they've had success in the Celebration Bowl, and that's kind of sustained them in their wins against the SWAC. But, it's not always the sexiest brand of football. the coaches that are very hardworking and successful, but not the level of notoriety as Michael Vick, as Deshawn Jackson. I mean, we saw it with Jackson State when Deion Sanders was there, and we still saw it with Colorado when he was with Colorado. There is I don't know, these types of hires, they seem to energize guys who are career HBCU guys. And, again, neither Deshawn Jackson or Michael Vick are Deion Sanders. They're not going to have maybe necessarily his brand of swagger, but they are going to come with, people who have never paid attention to a MEAC game in general. And so, there's going to be that extra bit of, okay, the lights are on bright. Let's show them, hey, you know what? This road to the championship still goes through Orangeburg. It still goes through Durham. And there's going to be, and I think maybe there'll be some give back for some other guys in the coaching profession, like maybe a Dr. Alvin Parker, who, I had someone talk to me as an AD this week, and they talked about how, a guy like him, normally he would be the one that would be getting that Norfolk State job or that Delaware State job. And so it's going to be interesting to see the dynamics between how these coaches mesh together.
And Dr. Parker, the head coach at Virginia Union, took them to a record season, all quarterfinals of the NCAA Division II playoffs this year in football, behind Jada Byers, the all-world running back there at Virginia Union. Great season there, and like you said, maybe he would have been the guy, but that did not happen this year. So definitely a lot of different ways to look at this and a lot of different opinions as well. Before we get out of here, I want to talk hoops, but Steve, you did mention Colorado there for a second. I think that's a good little segue. Wilton, let's kick it over to you. I kind of feel like the Jackson State era at Colorado kind of came to a close this season from the standpoint of many of those players that were impact players at Jackson State finishing out their eligibility. Colorado finished the season with the loss in the Alamo Bowl. Wilton, what did you take away from Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, Cameron Silman-Craig, Shiloh Sanders, and that Jackson State kind of residual mentions, notoriety, if you will, with those players at Colorado the last couple of years?
It made me appreciate having the chance to see them up close in person when they played at Jackson State. I just think back to Shedeur, how shy he was when he first got to Jackson State, even how quiet Travis was, and Cameron Silman-Craig, like he didn't really talk as much when he was at Jackson State, but to see them grow like as leaders at Colorado and to see where they are, I just thought it was phenomenal to watch. As far as more so maybe from a criticism standpoint, I also saw some things that still remain the same. Like when I look at Shedeur Sanders, great quarterback, there are also some things that, he'll still have to work on in preparation for getting into the NFL. And one of the biggest things that I'm sure all of us know is that sometimes he holds on to the ball too much as opposed to getting rid of the ball, and preventing some bad situations offensively. Same things we saw at Jackson State. But overall, I liked what I saw in terms of the growth. Travis is definitely him. We only saw a small glimpse of him at Jackson State, but I could just think of some of the plays that he made at Colorado. It just made me really appreciate the catch he made against North Carolina Central in that Celebration Bowl, and then just the catch he made against Alcorn at Alcorn. I mean, those were only glimpses of who we would see become, obviously, the Heisman Trophy winner. The development of Cameron Silman-Craig, I just thought it was great. It was good to see them go, and like I said, it starts a new chapter of new players and different players coming into Colorado, but definitely closes one of those players that played at Jackson State before transitioning to Colorado.
All right, closing minutes of the show here, Steve. I want to let you chime in here, and let's talk a little basketball. I know Norfolk State women have been on fire. Who are a couple of teams that you have seen in the preseason, if you will, before we get into conference play in January, either on the men's or women's side, who have really caught your eye?
Well, I think you look at both Norfolk State teams. The women are the two-time defending MEAC champions, Kiera Willer and Diamond Johnson. They have some real ball players. Again, they just beat Auburn. They previously beat Missouri. There was another SEC team that they played that they were giving them a run too, and then ran out of steam a little bit at two. So No, they're not really out here playing Sisters of the Poor too much. They did play Shaw, CIAA team, and they beat them as they should. But even that, they're not ducking any smoke or any competition, and neither are the men. The men just got a big win over High Point, who were a really solid mid-major team out of the Big South. So Norfolk State, all eyes will be on them start to finish. Of course, that's where the MEAC tournament will be. Over in the SWAC, we also have, Alabama A&M, Dawn Thornton getting her feet wet over there is going to be fun to watch. I also look at, South Carolina State. They've got some solid wins this year. They actually were up, and they were up like 17 on UGA the other day, and they in the first half, and they lost. So. And I'll be interested to see what my guy Cleo Hill does up there at Maryland Eastern Shore. It looks like maybe Howard and North Carolina Central have taken a step back. Will UMES and South Carolina State kind of come up and be the challengers in Norfolk State on the men's side? We'll look forward to it.
All right, it'll be something to watch, and we'll have more hoops highlights coming up in the weeks to come right here on HBCU Game Day. I'm Tolly Carr from Atlanta. That's Stephen J. Gaither in the middle. And on the other side is Wilton Jackson from Jackson, Mississippi. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us right here on HBCU Game Day. We'll see you next week.